Pedro Sánchez, con su regularización masiva, ha provocado una invasión de nuestra frontera que hoy están viviendo en primer lugar los españoles.
Una invasión. You don't need to know Spanish to know that word, do you? Invasión. That's the one and only Santiago Abascal, the leader of the Vox Party, the mega party of Spain. They are a brand new party, barely 10 years old, and they're already the third most popular party in the nation. And you can be assured that they're about to skyrocket to number one as a result of this. We're already seeing it with the AfD in Germany. We're seeing it with National Rally in Spain. We're seeing it with Reform UK in Britain. I mean, that's the irony here. Left-wing socialist policies only end up ultimately empowering the nationalist right. That's been the pattern that we've been seeing over the last decade, precisely because those policies are so absurdly insane. They're so obviously out of touch with reality. They're so out of touch with reality that it renders their own propaganda absurd, right? It renders what the legacy media, the propaganda arm of the socialist left, it renders what the legacy media tries to label as far right and fringe totally and completely mainstream. And all you have to do to prove that is look at the way the whole of Europe, even the EU, is reacting to this. Europe has officially turned on Spain. Europe has turned on Spain. Spain's own neighbors are now ultimately turning on Madrid and demanding Spain be locked out of one of the European Union's most sacred institutions, and that's the Schengen area. So as I noted earlier, Schengen is the multinational agreement that allows passport-free travel across 29 European countries. Many of you know that. If you say you fly into Madrid, show your passport, and then you take a train or fly to France, you don't need to show your passport again, right? It's once you're in, you're in. You can travel freely. It's open access. It's arguably the single most visible, tangible symbol of European integration since the end of the Cold War. And the list of European leaders calling for Spain's expulsion from that agreement is growing literally by the hour. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, she was the first one to threaten to blow it all up, at least as far as Spain is concerned. Meloni said the footage coming out of Ceuta was, quote, in her words, I got the English translation, striking evidence that uncontrolled illegal immigration represents a real threat to the security of Europe's borders. It's not just Spain. That's the key. Schengen makes this a threat to the whole of the continent. And then she announced that she was convening her security officials specifically to prepare, quote, extraordinary measures, including the suspension of the Schengen area with Spain. So they are not going to, states, individual nations are not going to honor, they're threatening of not honoring Schengen with anyone coming out of Spain. They will do border checks. Central banks continue buying gold at record levels all over the world. Global debt continues to explode. Geopolitical tensions aren't going away. And if those trends haven't changed, then why would the case for owning physical gold and silver? That's one reason why I trust Augusta Precious Metals. So if you'd like to learn more, go to turleybuysgold.com or text Turley to 35052. That's 35052 and request Augusta's free guide. Click on that link below right now. We're now getting word that Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, she is now openly calling for Spain's suspension from Schengen. Now keep in mind, Mette Frederiksen is a leftist. She's a political, but she's a Danish leftist. And if you've been following this channel for some time, and if not, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You'll know that the Danish left has gone full nationalist. They've gone full, at least when it comes to border security. They have literally adopted and embraced their so-called far-right immigration policies. It's insane to look at. They've closed their borders. They're deporting migrants at record numbers. They're closing mosques. It's crazy. So it's an example of what's known as the Overton window shifting, particularly in Denmark and increasingly in Europe as a whole. We have studies that show the Overton window has been shifting steadily to the right over the last decade and the whole of the continent. If you don't, the Overton window just defines what's considered mainstream politics. And as Elon Musk loves to argue, the so-called far right are actually just normal people. It's just normal mainstream politics at this point. And even leftists are indeed proving that, in that they are embracing what they used to demonize as far right, extremist right, radical right border policies. And as it happens, we're even seeing it with the European Union, if you can believe it. By the way, we just got word the Finnish president is calling, our prime minister is calling for the end of the Schengen protocol with Spain, and Sweden has now also joined. Well, that's some breaking news as we speak. And so the numbers just keep growing and growing. Europe does not want this, and the European Union, if you can believe it, does not want this. So look at this tweet from Ursula von der Leyen. She's the president of the European Commission. She wrote, quote, "The images coming from Ceuta are unacceptable. We cannot allow anyone to come to our union without abiding by our rules. Dangerous crossings must stop immediately. Smuggling networks must be dismantled, and returns must be swift as our rules allow. I tasked 2 commissioners to support to control the situation." Again, that's coming from the very woman. You just have to put this in context. That is coming from the very woman who has done everything she possibly can in her power to get rid of European leaders like Viktor Orban of Hungary and Mateusz Morawiecki of Poland, men who stood steadfastly for border security for their nation and their own national sovereignty. This is the same woman who, through her channels, interfered in the elections, the most recent presidential elections in Romania, literally trying to jail their nationalist papa, Georgescu, who was on track of winning. Now the chickens have come home to roost, as we say here in the States. Chickens have come home to roost. Had she listened to Viktor Orban, had she listened to Georgescu, had she listened to someone like Mateusz Morawiecki, had she used the EU's influence to champion the Vox Party, rather than the feckless leftist Sanchez, we wouldn't be having this problem, would we? 39 people would be alive today. Now, you should know this actually isn't the first time this exact tension between Brussels and Madrid has surfaced. Like I said, this is really a big time Madrid problem. Back in 2022, again under the Sanchez administration, members of the European Parliament formally complained in writing that Spain had consistently refused to allow Frontex, again that's EU's border patrol, to operate directly on the land borders of Ceuta and Melilla. Again, that's their other border city there. Madrid has consistently blocked Frontex from border patrol in those areas, even though Frontex is actually legally responsible for maintaining the security of the continent's borders. In other words, it's not a purely bilateral Spain-Morocco matter, especially with the Schengen protocol in place. You know, you were supposed to see EU, the Frontex, EU border control there as well, but Madrid blocked it. They didn't want anything to do with it. And so even when the EU has tried to help secure this exact border to avoid this precise situation, Spain has pushed back and kept Brussels at arm's length, right up to the moment the crisis got so catastrophically bad this week that Madrid had no choice but to accept help. So let's be crystal clear about what's happening here. You have Italy, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, growing numbers of EU member states publicly demanding Spain be expelled from the Schengen area immediately. You've got a number of European leaders accusing Madrid of directly encouraging human trafficking through its amnesty policies. You have the European Union itself signaling that it does not trust Spain to handle its own external border. I don't see how they will from this point forward. I see Frontex permanently as a force there at that border from this time going forward. When your own allies inside your own political and economic union are threatening to lock you out of the passport-free travel zone your entire continent's built around, That tells you everything you need to know about just how catastrophic Spain's self-inflicted border collapse has become and how much the EU itself has changed since the last migrant invasion, right? The Angela Merkel invasion crisis 10 years ago. One last thing before we go to your comments and questions. Remember, our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments, your questions. What's happening in Ceuta this week should be a very stark reminder of precisely what President Donald J. Trump has indeed accomplished undeniably in his second term. Do you remember these images? That's not Ceuta. That's Texas. That's images from our own southern border. You remember this, don't you? I know you do. This is what our own nation looked like every effing day for 4 straight years under Joe Biden. Millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of people poured into our nation over those 4 years. Cartels ran the show. Processing centers overflowed. And the Biden administration, they didn't refuse to stop it. They orchestrated. They smiled. Mayorkas looked straight into the camera and said that border was more secure than it's ever been. Biden, in that June debate, when he had that aneurysm in front of the entire world, tried to actually mutter through his oatmeal-crusted lips that his border was more secure than Trump's in Trump's first term. Now, look at the difference. That's the same border today. Under President Trump, illegal crossings have collapsed to historic lows. The wall construction that was frozen under Biden is back underway. Remain in Mexico is in force. Cartels that used to run an open-air smuggling operation across our southern border are being treated as the terrorist organizations they actually are. Trump didn't need a Supreme Court loophole explained to him. He didn't need a citizen petition to tell him amnesty invites chaos. He didn't need some stupid border bill trying to be passed by a bipartisan Senate. He simply secured the border on day one, because that's what a sovereign nation with a functioning government is actually supposed to do. So when you watch this footage out of Ceuta this week, gang, the swimmers, the smoke, the soldiers finally showing up days too late, the European Union itself begging Spain to let it help, don't just see it as a story about Spain and Morocco. See it as a mirror. See it as a reminder of exactly how bad things get when a left-wing government treats border security as optional, and exactly how much better things get almost immediately when a true nationalist leader treats it as non-negotiable. That's the entire lesson sitting right there in the water of Ceuta this week. And it's a lesson President Trump already taught our nation nearly 2 years ago.